fue la guerra que anduvo en la sierra herido para conquistar su tierra. Lo conocí en la batalla y entre tanta balacera, y el que es revolucionario puede morir donde quiera. Throughout the history, people told us that everything we were proposing to do at any moment was impossible and crazy. Starting with that whole Campbell Soup fight, that we were told, I don't know how many times, that what we were asking to do was impossible, that Campbell Soup was never going to sign an agreement with a group of workers that were not their employees. We heard the same thing at the Mount Olive fight and everything else that we've done, the multi-party collective bargaining agreements, the establishment of an independent commission that acts as a labor board by private agreement. Everybody thought that this was crazy, but I think that the goal and the purpose was not that we were going to establish a union. The goal and the purpose was defend the people from the abuses and the exploitation that were received at the hands of the industry.
The Farm Labor Organizing Committee, AFL-CIO or FLOC, is probably best known for its dramatic campaigns of strikes, boycotts, and cross-country marches. For more than 30 years, it has fought to improve the lives of migrant farm workers.
Una de las cosas que me enorgullece de FLOC es que...
One of the reasons I am proud of FLOC is that FLOC never looks for a fight just to win the fight. FLOC sees the necessity and fights and fights and fights and fights until they win.
Ve la necesidad y lucha y lucha y lucha y lucha hasta ganarlo.
Highly publicized efforts like the 8-year national boycott and the 550-mile walk from Toledo, Ohio to Camden, New Jersey to win a contract with the Campbell Soup Company, or the national boycott FLOC waged for 6 years against the Mount Olive Pickle Company to gain contracts in North Carolina. As grand as those campaigns may have been, they were only the tools needed to win something more fundamental and long-lasting than a strike or a boycott. What FLOC won through those struggles was the ability to compel growers and corporations to come to the bargaining table and create binding agreements to improve wages, working conditions, and housing, and most importantly, to guarantee that wherever farm workers organized under the FLOC banner, they would be treated as human beings, not as disposable sharecroppers.
Bueno, antes de que no tuviéramos un sindicato, la diferencia era como...
Well, before, when we had no labor union, the difference was that we were field workers who moved from one state to another. And what affected us most was that if we came to work here in the state of Ohio and finished the work, then we had to move to Texas or Florida. We couldn't get unemployment because cucumber season was too short to qualify us for unemployment. After the union won, working 6 weeks in the cucumber field qualified us for unemployment.
Que las 6 semanas de pepino nos contaran para el desempleo.
I think some of the critical points in the history have to do with, number one, the founding of the organization, with the incredible amount of sacrifice by many people, what I put my mom and dad through. I don't know how many of their cars I burned out organizing that. Really, at that time there were no resources. We had organizing families, friends, and all, and the enormous amount of time that they put in. The sacrifices were just incredible.
How did farm workers, people with very little, often not even an address, a group at the bottom of the economic ladder, how did they overcome an army of corporate attorneys and public relations firms, county sheriffs and their deputies, farmers and crew leaders?
Not playing into the opposition's hands and thinking out of the box in terms of strategies, which not always an easy thing to explain to people who the only thing they saw was one end of a tomato row to another, and one cucumber field to another, whatever crops that we were picking in those days. But what we fashioned that was a critical breakthrough was the multi-party negotiations, not only with the employer, but also with the exclusive buyer of the employer's crops.
After winning historic three-way agreements with Campbell Soup Company and the Growers Association, Flock succeeded in getting those agreements to cover other companies in Ohio, and then adopted a goal few thought it would achieve, organizing thousands of international migrant farm workers in North Carolina, some in the U.S. under the federal H-2A program, some with no documents at all.
Uno de los focos principales nuestros
One of our main focuses in the immigration movement has been not only to fortify, but also to form or help to form organizations with an immigrant base in this country, because only with an organized community will we achieve changes.
Starting with the Mount Olive Pickle Company, Flock returned to its strategy of boycotts and community organizing that earlier had proved successful against Campbell's.
El sindicato empezó en Carolina del Norte en el 97.
The labor union began in North Carolina in 1997 after the Ohio members passed a resolution asking us to investigate why they were paying less for the cucumber in North Carolina.
Norte Carolina.
7 years later, farm workers in the anti-union right-to-work state of North Carolina marked yet another groundbreaking achievement, winning a three-way contract agreement with the company and the Growers Association.
Cuando el sindicato entró a Carolina del Norte, una de las cosas que
When the labor union came to North Carolina, one of the most important things we did was to eliminate the blacklist. Workers now have the right to return without fear of punishment for voicing a complaint. They now have seniority, which is a very rare thing among field workers. Now they have the right to medical support. They have the right to go to and from Mexico if there's a family emergency. There are many things that they have won.
Flock's membership was changing rapidly from its traditional base of families from Texas and Florida making annual trips north to mostly single men, some of them recruited in Mexico through the H-2A program, others undocumented and less likely to return each year. Always believing that workers, regardless of nationality, deserved representation, and believing that as capitals freed across borders, so should labor, Flock was ready for the challenge.
En los finales del 90 empezamos a ver más y más gente llegando directamente de México.
In the late 90s, we began to see more and more people coming directly from Mexico, even from states as far away as Chiapas. Suddenly, our member base changed to being comprised mostly of people that lacked papers, people that were undocumented. Therefore, since the people we represent had changed, so too did the necessities of those people.
También vino un cambio en las necesidades de la gente.
The union took a leadership role in the emerging movement for immigrant rights, helping to form the National Coalition for Dignity and Permanent Residency, which helped pave the way for the unprecedented demonstrations in 2006. Flock also opened the union office in Monterrey, Mexico.
La oficina de Monterrey fue una petición que nos dieron nuestros miembros.
The Monterrey office came about as a request from our members, the same ones that were blacklisted, even though the association denied the existence of a blacklist. Old habits are difficult to change. The Monterrey office takes care of complaints about bribes, unfair charges, and age discrimination. All these complaints happen in Monterrey. We also help people with housing and with the American consulate when they need it. There are also corrupt police that steal from people, so we have to make sure that the workers are protected. Eventually, we would like the office to have more political power in Mexico, so that it will become possible to change laws in Mexico like in the United States.
Keeping the interests of workers and the importance of international solidarity at heart has helped FLOC stay at the forefront of labor and immigration struggles. Its latest innovative proposal is to establish a freedom visa, which would guarantee all workers the right to travel and work with labor rights and option to residency among the 3 NAFTA nations, Canada, the U.S., and Mexico. Such a portable visa would go a long way to replace the corruption and extortion that seems to always be part of guest worker programs.
It's an enormous challenge. This in the face of the whole immigration crisis. That debate is impacting us tremendously, and that whatever happens in that immigration debate in Congress is going to impact the H-2A workers that we represent in North Carolina, and trying to figure out how to preserve the unit in terms of representing those workers, whether they're called H-2A workers or any other kind of category under the immigration laws, may be very difficult for us. So we have to figure out a way to respond to these threats for the continuance of the organization.
Como la visa libertad, que es una idea.
The freedom visa is an idea that FLOC is proposing to manage future influx. With these ideas, we're trying to work out a proposal that comes from us, the immigrants.
De nosotros los inmigrantes, ¿no?
Which is connected to the trade agreement with Mexico. I think because of that trade agreement that has exacerbated the migrancy of workers, because of displacement of workers from, particularly from the rural countryside, the domination of the corn and coffee markets in Mexico have destroyed a lot of corn and coffee farmers, now those workers, if they're not trying to survive in the slums and the dump yards of Mexico, are in this country trying to survive and feed their families.
Bueno, hay una propuesta en el Senado con la cual no estamos de acuerdo.
There's a proposal in the Senate that we strongly disagree with. This proposal came out of the Senate around April, and it would divide the immigrant population into those who came here before a certain year and those who came after that year. Some would become legal and some would not. It would impose punishments and penalties, militarization of the borders, construction of a wall that would divide the United States from Mexico. Really, a series of things that we think are extremely racist, and whose aim is nothing more than to limit the capacity of the Latino community to become an integral part of this country.
And of course, it would help to have a better diplomacy with our neighboring countries in terms of not only our trade agreements, but in our relationships with them. We can't expect to dominate their economies forever and not expect there to be a fallout from it.
Por último, también otro punto que es principal en nuestra lucha es exponer.
Lastly, another important goal in our fight is to bring to public discussion the policies of the United States with respect to the countries of Latin America and other countries in what they call the Third World. Policies that, together with international financial institutions like the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank, are enslaving our countries. The mandate by these institutions to privatize all the national resources, the sale of the countries to transnational companies. This view, these policies in the United States are what's driving migration. It is very necessary that we attack this problem from the root.
Es muy necesaria si realmente queremos atacar este problema de raíz.
No vamos a dejar de luchar.
Until we win, we are not going to stop fighting until we reach something just and dignified for all who are here, and for their families, and for those who are thinking about coming here in the future, for the children of other people who will go hungry.
I say that to people. We've been in this business for 39 years, and we can't look at this as a goal to create some monolithic institution, to create a union per se. It just becomes a vehicle to do the right and good thing, to create an environment of justice for everybody, not just the workers, but the employers as well, because we want them to do a right and good thing. And if we can get in a good partnership with them, we will all be winners. So we'll continue to do that, no matter what people say that it's going to be impossible to continue to do more of the same. Over 39 years, we've proven otherwise, and we will continue. Those of us who were raised in this lifestyle in the labor camps and bore those experiences, and maybe that's why God put us here, and why we pass those experiences, because now we have people that can speak to those periods of oppression and exploitation, and bring about some reconciliation in that area, and we'll continue to do it until something happens, the right and good thing.